Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that is, honestly, completely life-changing. Child adoption in India is this deeply emotional journey, driven by the pure, beautiful desire to build a family. But let's be real, it's also incredibly intimidating from a legal standpoint. It's a path where overwhelming love meets strict, unforgiving bureaucracy. Whether you're actively looking to navigate this process yourself, or you just want to understand how the Indian legal system operates to protect its most vulnerable children, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to break down the step-by-step legal reality of this entire process, from the initial eligibility checks all the way through to the final court orders, so you have a crystal clear understanding of the road ahead.
You know, there's this quote that perfectly captures the profound duality of this whole thing. Adoption changes two lives at once. A child gets a family, and a family gets a child. But before the joy begins, the loss steps in. I think that really hits the nail on the head. It acknowledges the massive emotional weight of the journey, for sure, but it also highlights a fundamental truth. Before you can fully experience the joy of welcoming a child, the legal system absolutely has to take the reins. India tightly regulates child adoption, and it's fascinating to learn why. This strict legal framework isn't just there to create administrative headaches for parents. It acts as a necessary, uncompromising shield designed to protect the child first and foremost.
So, here's our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at 1. The CARA framework, 2. Eligibility and prep, 3. The 9-step legal journey, 4. Adopting an abandoned child, and finally, 5. The reality check. Let's jump right into part 1, the CARA framework. Okay, so it turns out that if you are adopting in India, the whole shebang hinges on one central authority. You're going through CARA, which stands for the Central Adoption Resource Authority. They operate directly under the Ministry of Women and Child Development, and they are the absolute operational backbone of this system. Historically, adoption in India could be this fractured, really confusing process that varied wildly from region to region, which obviously left a lot of vulnerabilities. To solve that, CARA digitized and centralized everything through a single online portal called CARINGS. Today, almost every legal adoption in the country flows exclusively through this one gateway. Understanding that CARA sets the universal rules and timelines is really the first major step in demystifying this journey. Now, we need to clear something up right away because there's a massive legal misconception out there regarding guardianship versus adoption. People toss these terms around interchangeably, but legally, they're worlds apart. Guardianship is merely temporary custody. It doesn't sever the child's ties to their biological family. And crucially, it does not grant the child inheritance rights. Adoption, on the flip side, is totally permanent. Once an adoption is finalized under Indian law, it severs all legal ties to the biological parents, and that child becomes your legal heir with full rights, exactly as a biological child would have. It provides total security, financial protection, and emotional finality for the child, which is exactly why the legal bar to achieve it is set so incredibly high. Moving right along to Section 2, eligibility and prep. CARA isn't messing around here. They use highly strict baseline filters to confirm that prospective parents aren't just highly motivated, but genuinely capable of providing a safe, enduring home. For instance, if you're a married couple, you have to prove at least 2 years of a stable marriage. Why 2 years? Well, it acts as a necessary psychological safeguard, ensuring the child enters a stable, adjusted environment rather than a newly formed, untested one. There are also specific rules and pathways if you're a single parent. Plus, combined age limits are strictly enforced depending on the age of the child you want to adopt, ensuring parents have the vitality to raise that child to adulthood. Throw in mandatory physical and mental health evaluations and proof of financial stability, and you start to see that these aren't just arbitrary bureaucratic hurdles. They're carefully designed filters to guarantee the child's long-term well-being. All right, let's talk paperwork. This is where the reality of bureaucracy meets the passion of wanting a child. You're going to need a very precise stack of documents. Birth and marriage certificates, PAN, Aadhaar, recent income tax returns spanning a couple of years to prove that financial stability we just talked about, medical fitness certificates signed by registered practitioners, and solid reference letters from people who can really vouch for your character. In the CARA system, precision is literally just as important as passion. Incomplete documentation is actually the single biggest reason applications stall out. A single missing signature or an expired certificate won't just cause a minor hiccup, it can freeze your file for weeks or even months. Every single file must be impeccably organized before you even think about hitting submit. All right, on to the core of the process. Section 3, the 9-step legal journey. So how does this actually play out? The process is a deeply structured sequence that starts online and ends in a courtroom. Phase 1 is all about administration and matching. You kick things off by registering on the Carings portal, uploading that meticulously gathered stack of documents we just discussed, and paying a modest registration fee. Then comes step 3, which honestly is often a source of immense anxiety for families, the home study report. This is not just a paperwork check. A trained social worker will actually visit your house, interview your family members, and assess your physical environment and emotional readiness to bring a child into your life. It's an intensely personal evaluation. Once you pass that hurdle, you join a seniority list. And this is where the waiting truly begins. You sit in queue until step 5, the child referral, where CARA officially matches you with a child and presents their medical and study reports for you to review and accept. Once you accept a match, things get very real. The process shifts dramatically from administrative to strictly legal. You take the child home for a trial period known as pre-adoption foster care. This lets the child and the family bond in a real-world setting. Following a successful transition, your agency helps you file a formal adoption petition. Step 8 is the ultimate finish line, the District Magistrate order. And actually, fun fact, thanks to recent legal amendments, District Magistrates now issue this final adoption order. This was a massive game changer that removed these cases from heavily backlogged civil courts, speeding up the legal finality and saving families literally years of waiting. Once that order is signed, it's a permanent legal bond. Finally, step 9 involves mandatory post-adoption follow-up visits by the agency, typically lasting up to 2 years, just to ensure the family is thriving and the child is settling in well. Let's shift gears to Section 4, adopting an abandoned child. The path for adopting a child found abandoned without a traceable biological family is incredibly sensitive and carries its own very strict protocol. If a child is found, they must be reported to the police or the Child Welfare Committee, the CWC, within 24 hours. This initiates a highly regulated process. The absolute most vital checkpoint here is that the CWC must officially declare the child legally free for adoption. And they do not do this lightly. They run police inquiries and wait a mandatory statutory period. This pause is absolutely vital to ensure a child truly has no biological family looking for them, ruling out terrible cases of accidental separation or kidnapping. No placement can legally proceed without this definitive declaration. Once cleared, the child enters the CARA system. And importantly, CARA gives priority consideration to families who are willing to adopt these specific children, trying to get them into a loving home as quickly as possible. And finally, Section 5, the reality check. Look, we have to be honest here. It is incredibly easy to get frustrated by the slow, grinding pace of this process. Families often feel exhausted by the wait. But learning why it operates this way completely shifts your perspective. This slow, bureaucratic process is not a flaw in the system. It's intentional due diligence. Every single checkpoint, every invasive home visit, every exhaustive document review exists for one singular purpose: to prevent child trafficking, coercion, and hasty, ill-fitted placements. It is a necessary shield designed entirely to protect vulnerable children who cannot advocate for themselves. When viewed through that lens of child safety, the frustrating bureaucracy actually transforms into a really reassuring layer of protection. To put this all into perspective, the timeline reality is stark and highly dependent on the choices a family makes. Because the demand for healthy infants far outstrips the number of legally free infants in the system, families can easily wait 2 to 3 long years just for a referral. The queue is massive. However, if a family decides to open their profile to adopt a child with functional needs, a disability, or simply an older child, that timeline shrinks dramatically. Often, it accelerates to just 3 to 6 months. This priority track is profoundly meaningful because these children, the older ones or those requiring special medical care, are the ones who often wait the absolute longest for a permanent home. So, the CARA process is structured, it's highly transparent, and it is built uncompromisingly on child protection principles. But mastering the legal framework and perfecting the paperwork, that's really only half the journey. The real test is completely internal. It's a test of resilience. Are you emotionally prepared for the profound uncertainty of the wait? And are you truly, deeply ready to change 2 lives forever?